Well, hi there, spiritual wayfinders. Welcome to the Betwixt podcast, a waypoint for inspiring conversation and grounding practices that help us navigate the spiritual life with embodied wisdom. I'm Deb Gregory. This episode is released in partnership with InterVarsity Press. You can get 25% off my new book, Spiritual Wayfinding, with the code IVPOD25 at ivpress.com/spiritual-wayfinding. That's IVPOD25 for 25% off and free U.S. shipping. In this episode, I'm joined by Lacy Borgo, spiritual director, Renovare faculty member, and longtime companion to children and families at Haven House, a transitional housing community in Colorado. She's the author of Spiritual Conversations with Children and Life with God for Children, books that have helped many of us reimagine children not as empty vessels to be filled, but as natural contemplatives who can lead us deeper into the heart of God. Well, Lacy, I am really happy that you and I finally get to meet and we can explore the spirituality of children together today. So thank you for joining me.
I'm so glad to be with you. I'm eager to see how our conversation unfolds.
Me too. Yes, we're going to amble together and see where we go.
Love
Uh,
that word, amble.
isn't that a great word?
It is such a great word.
We should do more of it. Well, let's begin with our bodies.
Mm.
Would you share with us either a meditation, because I've sent you something from the book and you've also read pieces of spiritual wayfinding. You can talk about maybe a practice you've tried or another practice that's meaningful to you. What do you have for us today?
Well, I have been doing something very similar to the poo sticks practice for quite a long time. That meditation to focus mind and body that invites attention and also freedom and noticing thoughts and feelings and then releasing them into the loving care of God has been really a core practice for me for maybe 15 years.
Wow.
And it's recently taken on a new life for me. It's made a little bit of a turn. But before I get into the turn, maybe I could just say in Montrose, Colorado, where I live, the Uncompahgre River flows through this beautiful park right next to the Ute, UTE, which are Native Americans, the Ute Park and Indigenous Center. And when my children were little, we would go down to that park. Met with some other women and we would have prayer together. But the children who know how to embody prayer would go down to the little stream of the Uncompahgre River and release leaves upstream and watch them go downstream. It was such an embodied and visionary understanding that what we release in this kind of prayer that you describe, what we release isn't dropped into oblivion, you know?
Yes.
It is released into the tender care of God. And that helps me somehow. That helps me let go of my fears. Helps me let go of my concerns. I struggled for a while to let go of my concerns and give my attention fully to God because, man, these were important.
Yes.
There was some attachment to them. But
Right.
knowing that I was releasing them into, this stream of living water, both literally and metaphorically, really gave me more freedom to do so. And I think the kiddos really showed me how to do that. Leaves and sticks and twigs and some rocks even, certainly bark.
Yes. Grass.
All the floaties. That's right.
Flower petals, yes. Tell me a little bit more about that, awareness of attachment and the visual, being able to watch it. Because a lot of people will do meditations like this. The meditation we're talking about is, based on the story of Winnie the Pooh, and he and his friends would throw twigs on one side of the bridge, and then they'd run to the other to see which one came through first, but it's also a way of attaching maybe thoughts or, like you said, concerns and worries. What is it like to actually visualize that release? Because we can do that in our mind in a lot of mindfulness meditations. But when you actually practice that with your body and watch it move, what happens for you?
Well, I think a number of things. One is all the senses get involved. Do you know what I mean? Like we can smell water. And
Yeah.
we can smell the breeze coming through and feel it on our skin. We get I think a more dimensioned view of what it means to release. So, whatever, for me, whatever is released also becomes eventually an erosion, and as it breaks down, becomes part of the stream. So, nothing is wasted. Whatever we release, it is not wasted, it is not discarded, it doesn't move to like a cosmic trash heap, it is rather enfolded in the loving care of God. And God, who can hold these concerns or thoughts or feelings and not become attached to them. And God, who there is no waste in the kingdom of God, as
Ugh.
a Christian philosopher Dallas Willard often said, nothing is wasted, even what we release, and that just gave me some freedom, like, I didn't have to hold it all. I could turn my attention fully to the Trinitarian presence, and what I released, I did not have to care for.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I hear both that ability to detach physically from something and then also that encouragement to detach from a care. And at the same time, then attaching yourself to God who will take care of our cares.
And there's something multisensory, like, we get ourselves over to some water, and I live in high desert, so I have to go somewhere to find water. There's no water up
Yeah.
here. But the Uncompahgre next to the park and really watching children because I think, you know, would I have floated everything I could find down the river? I would not have. I might have observed it, I might have chatted it up with friends, might have I'm confessing here so everyone can pray for me. I might have been on my phone, but
Yes.
children are drawn to water, and if there's a puddle, they'll play in it.
Right. Yeah, that's so great. Tell us about your work with children because you've really kind of opened up the imagination of those of us who work in the spiritual formation world to fresh ways of not only guiding the spirituality of children but being led by their wisdom. Tell us about how that began for you and some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I'm on a little break right now, but I have been working with children at Haven House, which is a transitional facility for families without housing for over a decade. And my doctoral dissertation came from that work. It came from a pastoral counseling course that I took in seminary, and I was accompanying children in pastoral counseling. And I was also being trained as a spiritual director, and I thought, ooh. And I noticed that the conversations naturally moved towards questions of spirituality, that children have this really freedom to ask existential questions without forcing an answer. So adults ask us existential questions or running underneath the threads of our lives, but we really work hard to force an answer. And children are just like, interesting.
Right.
I wonder, I wonder, I wonder,
I
I wonder.
wonder.
And that's a incredible freedom that deepens their life with God. Doesn't move them away. It moves them ever deeper.
Yes. I'm curious about children as natural contemplatives. You've touched on that a little bit. Like more about, you know, maybe what you've discovered about their natural longing for God and, how do we accompany them in that,
Hmm.
that longing?
Well, I think a couple things. I think we're all humanity. We are wired for accompaniment. We are wired to be connected to God and to each other and to God through each other. And that also includes nature. Like we are wired to connect with the natural world and God through the natural world. And children lack the baggage that adults have for that connection. And they have more freedom than we do because they lack the baggage. So they'll engage God and others in that wondering way. I think to your second question, how we come alongside of them, two words. Maybe the first is humility. We often come to children to teach them something or to shape them in a particular way. But if we want to really hear what's happening underneath, we will have to self empty. So follow Jesus in the kenosis, the kenotic way. Self empty what we know and stay at their elbow, which is humility. And then my second word is to get curious. So
Mm.
to get curious, asking questions rather than giving answers. Get curious in various different ways because children also are learning to articulate. They're learning to talk, learning to use language. And so we accompany them in the various ways that they communicate, which is through play, through creating, through play and creation are really their two primary ways of expressing what's bubbling up deep within them. And then also they project. So they project what's happening within them on the outward world. And if we can get curious in those three dimensions of the ways that they communicate, we can hear the their own life with God and also the wisdom that they bring to us. When Jesus said, like children, listen to children. This is what he means. They can really offer us a reciprocal spiritual formation.
Yeah. That's something I stumbled on by accident. You hope that parents know this. I definitely was in that mindset of like, I need to teach and guide my children, and especially in spiritual matters. But during the pandemic, our small community had to shift online, and we thought, well, what can we do together? Because there was a lot of families and, children mainly in elementary school. So we decided to modify like an evening prayer time, and we would do a shortened Lectio Divina style of reading a psalm together. And we would use just like a children's version of the Psalms. And so we would let the kids be the readers. So we'd read it just 3 times for the sake of time. So we'd have 3 children who could volunteer to read. And then we as adults would let them be the primary interpreters, and we all learned to be very quiet after like the first few times we did this because we didn't have much to add. They had the best wisdom. It was such a beautiful experience. And so I think that shaped how I related again to my kids and to other children I love what you say of curiosity.
Mm, mm.
And also those 3 things. Walk us through that. Let's start at the end because I'm really curious about projection. What do you mean by that?
Well, we all do it, but adults, meaning that we take what's happening within us and we use sort of metaphor and put it outside of us so that we can see it. So we might be feeling angry, and as adults, we say, oh, I think that person's angry. That person might not be angry, but we're projecting our own anger on them. And for children, they project what's inside. Outside so that they can see it. Then, and how a simple example of that is, let's say that something happens at school, and then they come home and your little one is playing race cars on the linoleum in the kitchen, and suddenly these race cars have a little bit of personality, and they have an incident in the story that this child is telling. Well, they are projecting what happened at school onto their race cars and telling the story so that they can see it outside of themselves. And it's a beautiful way to pray, to teach children to pray and play. How is God speaking to your race cars? And then they enter into this conversation. So the one that they are not quite developed enough to have internally and consciously, they're having externally. So, like when I work with children at Haven House, when they first enter the room and then we sit down together, I give them a whole set of images of Jesus and children. Some of them don't know who Jesus is. Most do, but Jesus is, say, playing a video game with a kid. Jesus is hugging a child when their parent is leaving. Jesus is playing out in the playground. And then there will also be a whole collection of nature images. And I say, which of these pictures do you love right now? Which one do you like the most? And what the child is doing is projecting their longing. What is it that they want onto this picture? And after they choose the picture, we set it next to a little battery powered candle because I'm not fire responsible.
Yes.
It's good to know your your
Yeah,
boundaries, your
your
limits.
limits, yes.
So we set this picture and I say, "Would you like to tell me a little bit more about that?" And then through the projection, they can unfold it a little bit. Sometimes they have words, sometimes they don't. Sometimes children say, I want to draw another picture, another picture. I can think of another picture. So they're going to project what's happening internally onto this other picture again. And, you think of a projector. Man, that's dating me.
Yes. What are those?
That's right. For those of us of a certain age, if you remember projectors, they're taking a tiny internal image and putting it up on a wall.
Yeah,
That's what children play does that for them, creating does that for them, and it gives us not the whole picture. We just as adults, we just get a little glimpse of how God is meeting them in the deep places.
that's very helpful. What can we learn from children as adults? I mean, do we do these things as well? We just mask them a little bit better. What can we as adults learn from just understanding these movements for children?
Yeah. I would say that the thing that I am currently learning most from children. So it's not in the same thread that we've been talking, but it's the lesson of my life right now
Okay.
is that children they allow themselves and the younger they are free to fail. They are free to learn. They are free to be an amateur, not a professional. I mean, we know that as soon as children are exposed to screens and see themselves, that they are less free. So we know that it's true for adults as well, of course, but you never see a toddler who's learning to walk and has fallen 17 times, shaming themselves for falling. Well, they get up and they do it again. They get up
Yeah.
and they do it again. I love watching young children create art. I mean, we often break out the watercolors at Haven House and we all get together. And the younger the child, the less shame they feel at showing you their art. Let me show
Right.
you what I painted. Will you put this on your fridge? Isn't this amazing? And perfection is not in the picture. What even is perfection? What even is perfection?
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm learning from children. And I think also that's true in our spiritual lives. I wonder how much of our quest at getting theology exactly perfect limits our relationship with God.
Yes.
And I have a doctorate degree. I went to seminary. I think solidly good theology is important. But I wonder if we have a compulsive attachment to getting it exactly perfect and in what ways that might keep us from entering into relationship with God.
Yeah. That keeps our relationship in our head rather than our whole person relating with God.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the second thing I continue to learn from children is that our life with God is very embodied. I met with a little one who came from the Russian Orthodox tradition. Sign of the cross, very important. And he showed me how to pray with one hand. And so if you have your thumb and your first finger and your middle finger and put those together, that's a representation of the Trinity. And then he would say your ring finger and your pinky finger are all God and all human. That's Jesus. All God, all human, down to the palm, so coming to earth, the incarnation. So here is a prayer in one hand And whenever he would get nervous at school, let's say a test or something, or nervous on the playground, he would make this symbol as a prayer. So he didn't use verbal articulation. Speaking of really good theology, right here in one hand, this was his prayer. And he would take this hand and put it on his belly if he was nervous, because that's where the butterflies were. And then he taught himself to do it on his non dominant hand, which took some work. And to do the exact same, first three fingers together, Trinity, two natures of Christ, incarnation down to the palm on his non dominant hand. So when he was taking his math test, use his dominant hand with the math test and pray with his non dominant hand. If that is not praying without ceasing, I don't know what is. I think Paul would
Wow.
totally approve.
Yes.
So
Amazing.
he would have one little hand sitting on his desk with that symbol praying, his mind turning towards God, and then his other hand he's doing the test. So I think the embodiment piece is something that they absolutely continue to teach me.
That's beautiful. I am going to take that with me. That is something I can put in my pocket.
Yeah, right, right. Or on your belly if you're
On
nervous,
your
on your
belly.
chest if you need to feel centered.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's wonderful. Let's pause here at a trail marker to get our bearings. Earlier in the episode, Lacy and I mentioned the Pooh Thought Sticks practice, and I wanted to give a clearer picture of what this practice actually is and why it works. In Spiritual Wayfinding, I tell the story of Winnie the Pooh dropping a pine cone into the river and watching it drift downstream. And this led to a game of Pooh Sticks, which he loved to play on Pooh Sticks Bridge with all of his friends. My family and I play a similar game where we gather sticks on our walk and then we attach our sticky thoughts to the stick. We release it into moving water and then we watch it drift away. And that simple movement, naming something, releasing it, and watching it go, is the heart of the practice. And if you want to try it yourself, I'll link a free download to the Pooh Thought Sticks walk in the show notes. Now here's the key insight. Pooh Thought Sticks isn't about getting rid of sticky thoughts. It's about accepting them long enough to release them. And psychologists call this externalization, taking something that's swirling inside and giving it shape outside your body. We're not fighting the thought or trying to erase it. We're acknowledging it, naming it, and playing with the sensation of detachment. Research shows that suppressing a thought actually makes it stickier. And when you choose a stick to represent a thought, your body recognizes that it doesn't have to grip it anymore. And then, like Lacy described, you're entrusting it to something larger than you, letting the current carry what you no longer need to grip. And I think the deeper spiritual truth here is that release is not abandonment. Release is trust. What we let go of isn't discarded, it's carried. So as you listen to the rest of this conversation, you might want to hold this question. What sticky thought or concern in me is ready to be named, accepted, and released, not erased, but entrusted? So we're in a moment of a lot of anxiety. We're carrying that in our bodies. Children, we're passing that along to our children in the classrooms, in our homes. Are there some ways of regulating that are helpful for us as we work with kids? Is it even a thing to learn how to regulate with God when we're anxious?
Well, I hope this doesn't sound pandering because I don't mean it that way, but I really think taking a prayer walk together can be so helpful. It helps us in many ways. It helps us kind of move those heavy feelings out of our bodies through moving our major muscle groups. Our bodies do hold our anxiety and they do hold our fear. And walking, whether you're walking simply around your block if you live in town, or if you can go take a walk at a park, that's helpful as well. but just getting out and moving our bodies. The second reason to walk, in my experience, is that children often talk more freely when there's a third thing. When we're shoulder to shoulder, not face to face, and when they have other things to, if you're walking around the block, you're like, oh, so and so's dog is out. Or, oh, they painted their house this color. And those are third things that help take the pressure off of a conversation. You ever wonder why kids want to talk when you're in the car together, when right on the drive to school, they want to drop something big? Why?
Right.
There's a third thing, which is
Yeah.
the driving car and all the things that are happening around that relieves the pressure. And then being able to, as you mentioned in your book so beautifully, that being together and walking together and sharing conversation helps co regulation. Also, the walking brings a rhythm to our breath, and
Yes.
that rhythmed breathing regulates our nervous system. One of the best things we could do is at the end of the day, after everybody's home, is go take a walk.
Yeah.
And maybe in the walk, we say, what were some of the goods you experienced today? Where were some of the graces, so the ways that God empowered you? And then what were some things you saw that grieved you, that made you sad?
Yeah.
In the telling and in the listening and in the moving of our bodies, God gave us a system to move this through us, and it's these wonderful bodies we have.
Yeah. And I hear in that this call to connect with God fully rather than just, memorize these verses, which I'm all for memorizing verses, but so much of our conversations with kids just are very static and in the mind. So that's helpful. What happens if kids are resistant? If we notice children are in a place of resistance to spiritual things or spiritual conversations?
Well, there is a place for teaching children. So let me just say that at the onset. Children are brand new in this world and they need to be taught. I think we overteach and underlisten. So I'm not saying that teaching is not important. It is very important. It is essential. And we underlisten. So when children are resistant to, say, spiritual things, and I'm using quote unquote spiritual things, can I just remind us that everything is spiritual?
Yes.
So God's fingerprints, which is language we use at Haven House, can be found everywhere. So instead begin with those questions. What something good that happened today? When did you feel most yourself?
Mm,
We help children hear themselves. In our world today, hearing ourselves is actually an underrepresented gift. Children hear others, children hear adults, children hear what all kinds of media wants them to hear, what the culture wants them to hear. What would it look like to help children hear themselves?
wow.
So when they tell us what is good, the moment when they felt most fully themselves, we listen until they have no more words. And we get curious and we say things like, can you say some more about that? Or we say, I wonder how that felt in your body. So they're already naturally embodied. Now ask them, in that moment when you stood up for someone on the playground and you felt really fully yourself, how did your body feel? I mean, they may say, I felt strong or I felt afraid. How did you stand there and stay standing there when you felt afraid? Now we help them to hear themselves. And God is present in that.
Mm,
God is present in that.
yeah. Thank you. That's very helpful. Is there anything else you'd like to share about what you're working on now, what you're thinking about that hasn't yet made it into a book? What's going on for you?
Yes, I have a book that we're just working on a home for it right now, but it's totally done.
Exciting. Okay.
For the last 2 years, I have been hosting listening circles for parents of queer kids.
Okay.
So, of kids coming out around sexual or gender orientations, discoveries, wonderings. The line is that when kids of Christian parents come out of the closet, parents go in. Parents can really struggle with grief. Their spiritual life can feel upended. Certainly, their social circle can feel like all the apples just fall right out of the cart. And so, for the last 2 years, I've been hosting listening circles, which is spiritual accompaniment for parents. And wherever parents find themselves, I mean, in our day, we're either on one side or another.
So polarized.
Yes, so polarized. But what I've found is that wherever parents find themselves, many have a similar, not the same, have a similar experience. Where are you, God? What does my faithfulness look like? How do I wrestle with scripture? How do I wrestle with my community? And then how do I love my child?
Good.
So in 2027, hopefully the book will come out, tentatively titled Always Learning to Love.
Wonderful.
That's my work.
That is good. That's courageous work because it's, like we said, it's a very polarized topic right now. And again, it's one of those topics we want to engage with our head, and people are very vocal about it. But when you're going through it, all of the turmoil inside needs a place to settle, and you need people to regulate with, right? To listen with.
Right. And to discover that God is present. God is not Elvis, did not leave the building
Yeah.
when when children come out. God is very present. So how do we let God anchor us?
Yes. How do we let God anchor us? That's terrifying for a lot of people who have a view of God as punishing or abandoning God, but to return to what you're saying, God hasn't abandoned us or our children. Thank you. I'm
Mm.
really looking forward to that. This is actually a big topic for neurodivergent families because there's a higher rate of questions about sexuality among children who are neurodivergent. Is there anything that you want to add about that?
Only that is true. That is what we're noticing. And I have a trans masculine child. So my oldest kid, who is 25, we've been on this journey and who is also neurodivergent.
Okay.
Yes, that is what we are noticing. What we understand about it, we don't quite know yet.
Yeah.
But lots of people are listening, lots of people are learning.
Yes, there's a lot of pieces to this. So when we're tempted to really make this a binary issue,
Mhm.
we're missing a lot of deeper conversations and longings and ways of being in the world that are also important. Yeah.
What I have discovered, and it has shaped my entire life, and that is that God is always near. God is always compassionate. That is the first characteristic that God names for himself in Exodus in the entire Bible. It's God is compassionate who suffers with us. That's what I know in my bones.
That's so good. Thank you for this work and for sharing with us. As listeners are considering more embodied ways of being with God, is there a practice that you might invite us to try?
There is, and this one, the children at Haven and House and we discovered it during COVID when we were having to meet outside 6 feet apart in a circle. They helped me with this, and it has helped me. Sometimes after a long, heavy workday, I can feel weighed low. And there is something about this practice that helps to release what I'm carrying into the streams of living water, into God's loving, enveloping care. So it would be okay to kind of walk everyone through it.
Yes, walk us through it. And listeners, you're
Okay.
welcome to, you might need to come back to this if you're driving or doing something else. Listen now, come back and try it walking, right? Or try it standing. How do we do this? What do we need
Yes.
to prepare?
Okay, so I'm going to stay seated so I can stay near the mic. If you are able, stand. And if you are not, sit in your chair with your seat firmly in the seat. Some of us are firmer than others, but just stay in your seat and feel your back up against the back of the chair. If you are standing, let your feet ground you and even pull to your mind That passage from the Psalms, you are like a tree rooted by streams of living water. Let your feet or your seat root you next to that stream of living water. Become aware of your body and become aware of God's presence. The enfolding presence of the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, both surrounding you and within you. And then take your hands and turn them palms out. Let your arms rest straight if you're standing so that your hands are by your knees with your palms out. And then when you're ready, lift your arms to the sky as high as you can. Reach, 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 reach. If you are standing, keep your feet firmly grounded. Firmly grounded. Let your arms come up next to your ears and gather with your open hands everything good. And then bring those hands down, almost pulling that good over the crown of your head. You're just letting it infuse within you. And name that good. And I'm going to name my goods, and you can name yours. Mine, it's a delicious crunchy apple I had this morning. Some snuggles with my dog Zippy. A text from a beloved friend, and I'm just bringing those goods down past my head into my heart. Feel how those goods feel to your heart, down into your gut. So we're just bringing all the goods, letting your hands pass over all of your body. And then maybe reach up and grab another good. What is another good? Perhaps a grace. How has God empowered you today? I have a healthy body today. Not something to take lightly. How is God empowering you today? Such a lovely conversation with Deb. I would name that as a grace, pulling it all the way into my body. And now your hands, again resting at your knees, and hold them open like little cups, just little cups. What is some of the grief that you carry today? What are the tears that cup in your hand? Today I think of a beloved friend who's quite ill. I think of the wars that are happening in our world. I think of children who feel rejected and abandoned. Those are tears that are in my hands. What are the tears in yours? Becoming aware again of that stream of living water that we are firmly rooted next to, that feed the tree of our bodies. As gently as you can, release your tears into that stream. In your mind, release your tears. And with an open hand, let your tears release. And maybe even shake your hands out. And now take both arms and wrap them around yourself. And some of us love to rock. So maybe even rock. I am God's beloved. God is my beloved. Amen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Betwixt podcast. It has been a real pleasure to produce this podcast for you. Catch you next time.